The satisfaction of watching her scrub dirty dishes lasted exactly until the moment he arrived. Because the man who walked through the grand front doors of the Sovereign Hotel in Chicago was not just her husband, but the sole owner of the very marble floors they were standing on. He walked away with firm steps, leaving behind a heavy silence that the other employees knew far too well. Nobody looked at Rachel. Nobody dared, because looking at her meant risking becoming Fiona's next target. Nobody except Chloe Rivers. Chloe worked at the dessert station just a few feet away from Rachel. She was young, possessing that nervous energy of someone who had not yet learned to stay quiet when she should. "Hey," she whispered, without looking up from the plates she was meticulously decorating. "Do not let her get to you. She acts like this with all the new girls." Rachel glanced at her out of the corner of her eye. "I am not exactly new." Chloe frowned in confusion. "No, I have never seen you around here before, and you definitely do not look like you belong in this kitchen." Before Chloe could ask what that meant, the swinging kitchen doors burst open, and a woman marched in as if she owned the entire building. Lauren Davis, the official organizer of the High Society Gala, carried an electronic tablet and spoke on her phone at the same time, her voice echoing over the clatter of pots and pans. "No, no, absolutely not. The floral arrangements belong on the main table, not the auxiliary ones. I swear, I have to do everything myself." She hung up with a dramatic sigh and scanned the room. Her gaze swept the kitchen until her eyes locked onto Rachel. She froze. She stared at her for several long seconds with an expression that was incredibly difficult to decipher. A mix of surprise, profound satisfaction, and something that looked dangerously like pure pleasure. Well, well, well. Lauren walked slowly toward the washing station, every step deliberately calculated. So the rumors were actually true. They told me, and I simply refused to believe it. Lauren Fiona appeared right behind her. "You really should not be in the kitchen. The elite guests are already arriving for the evening. I merely wanted to verify something with my own two eyes." Lauren did not look away from Rachel, and I have just verified it perfectly. "Tell me, Rachel, how does it feel to be on the other side? I mean, really?" Rachel gripped the porcelain plate in her hands. She squeezed it so tightly that her knuckles turned completely white. "I am just working," she replied, with a voice that was low but incredibly firm. "Just like everyone else in this room." "Of course you are." Lauren smiled with venom. "We all work. The fundamental difference is that some of us know our proper place, and others, well, others desperately need to be reminded of it." Several employees exchanged highly uncomfortable glances. The air in the room became thick, almost impossible to breathe. Chloe stopped decorating the intricate pastries, her wide eyes darting back and forth between Lauren and Rachel as if witnessing a slow-motion car crash. Lauren Fiona intervened with a strictly practical tone. "You have an entire philanthropic gala to direct." "You are right." Lauren tucked her electronic tablet away. "But before I go, I absolutely need her to carry the crystal champagne glasses out to the main ballroom. Personally." Fiona raised a single perfectly plucked eyebrow. "I have a whole team of trained waiters for that exact task." "I know you do, but I specifically want her to do it. I want her to see up close exactly what she lost because of her poor life decisions." A freezing silence instantly fell over the entire kitchen staff. Every single employee stopped moving completely. They all intuitively felt that something much deeper was happening, something that went far beyond a simple work command. Rachel slowly released the porcelain plate, placed it carefully on the tall stack, dried her wet hands, and looked Lauren directly in the eyes. "I will carry the crystal glasses." Lauren blinked clearly, expecting immediate resistance. The silent obedience deeply disconcerted her for a brief second, but she recovered with frightening speed. "Perfect, someone hand her a heavy silver tray." Chloe rushed over to Rachel. As she picked up the heavy silver tray, loaded with delicate crystal glasses. "You really do not have to do this," she whispered softly. "Can I just go in your place?" "I absolutely need to do this," Rachel replied, without offering any further explanation. She walked straight toward the swinging doors that connected the loud kitchen to the luxurious main ballroom. With every single step, the surrounding noise shifted drastically. The metallic chaos of the kitchen faded away, quickly replaced by soft classical music, elegant laughter, the gentle clinking of expensive crystal and hushed conversations. They were two entirely different worlds, separated by a single wooden door. When Rachel finally entered the massive ballroom, absolutely no one looked at her. To the wealthy guests, she was completely invisible, just another anonymous member of the service staff, a faceless shadow moving quietly between the tables, serving drinks without a name. She placed the delicate glasses on the first table. Hands adorned with heavy diamond rings took them without a single word of thanks, without even registering her human presence. She moved on to the second table, experiencing the exact same treatment. The third table was identical, and then she finally reached the main head table. Sitting right in the center, completely surrounded by the most influential women in the entire city of Chicago, was Amelia Evans, an older woman who naturally radiated intense authority. She was one of those rare people who never needed to raise her voice to make everyone around her fall utterly silent. By her side, several wealthy women were casually discussing massive financial investments, European vacations, and high society social commitments. Rachel carefully placed a crystal glass in front of one of the distinguished guests. Her hand trembled almost imperceptibly as she lowered it. "Careful," the wealthy guest snapped, without even bothering to look at her. "These crystal glasses cost significantly more than your entire monthly salary." A few discreet, mocking laughs echoed around the table. Rachel took a very deep breath and calmly continued serving. It was precisely at that moment that Amelia Evans looked up from her plate. Her sharp eyes met Rachel's, and something instantly shifted in her strict expression. It was incredibly subtle, but completely unmistakable. It was just a fleeting instant, a tiny flash of recognition followed immediately by a perfectly constructed mask of cold indifference. Rachel placed the final glass on the pristine tablecloth and turned around to head back to the kitchen. But before she could take even 2 steps, she heard Lauren's voice loudly amplified by a microphone from the small stage at the front of the ballroom. "Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Grand Annual Gala of the Rebirth Foundation. Tonight we celebrate boundless generosity, pure elegance, and above all the moral values that truly define us as a magnificent community." Rachel stopped dead in her tracks near the kitchen door, holding the empty silver tray tightly against her chest, like a protective shield. "And speaking of moral values," Lauren continued, her voice taking on a very specific tone that only Rachel could instantly recognize as incredibly dangerous. "I want to dedicate a few special words to all the wonderful people who make this magical night possible. Our incredible service team that works tirelessly behind the scenes." Polite, scattered applause filled the massive room. Lauren smiled broadly. "I especially want to recognize those who, despite life's unfortunate circumstances, ultimately find their proper place exactly where they belong, hidden away in the kitchen, serving others, washing dirty dishes, because we all have a specific purpose in life, do we not? And there is true beauty in gracefully accepting ours." The cruel words fell heavily upon Rachel like massive stones. It was not a genuine recognition at all. It was a deeply humiliating public execution, brilliantly disguised as a compliment. And judging by the knowing looks that several employees shot her way, absolutely everyone knew it. Chloe, who had quietly slipped out to check on her, gently took her arm. "Come on, do not just stand out here. Do not give her the sick satisfaction of seeing you hurt." But Rachel physically could not move. Because at that precise moment, from the very back of the luxurious ballroom, The grand main doors swung wide open. The man who walked right into the center of the room caused the entire collective murmur to stop dead in its tracks. He walked with incredibly confident, firm steps, possessing the kind of powerful presence that absolutely cannot be bought or manufactured. The wealthy guests stood up as he passed by, and the waiters instantly straightened their tired backs. Lauren completely stopped speaking mid-sentence, her bright smile freezing on her face, as if someone had pressed pause on reality. Fiona, who was quietly watching from the kitchen entrance, turned visibly pale. Damien Evans, the owner of the Sovereign Hotel, scanned the room, locked eyes with Rachel holding a servant's tray, and his expression instantly twisted into barely contained explosive fury. Damien Evans did not move a single muscle for several agonizing seconds. He simply stood right in the middle of the extravagant ballroom, his intense eyes fixed directly on the kitchen door, where Rachel tightly held that empty silver tray, as if it were the only object keeping her standing. The previous murmur of the massive room had quickly transformed into a remarkably fragile silence, the kind that feels like it could shatter with a single deep breath. Absolutely no one understood why this incredibly powerful man was glaring toward the service kitchen with such terrifying intensity. Nobody, except Rachel herself. She slowly opened her eyes and met his furious gaze. They did not need to exchange a single spoken word. Over the long years, they had carefully built a secret language that only the two of them truly understood. It was a complex language constructed of intense glances, shared quiet moments, and difficult battles fought side by side against a harsh world that never considered them worthy of each other. Damien took a very deep breath, adjusted his tailored suit jacket, and instead of marching furiously toward her, he did something that Rachel genuinely did not expect. He turned sharply on his heel and walked directly toward the main VIP table. "Mother," his voice was chillingly calm but undeniably firm when he finally stopped directly in front of Amelia. "Good evening to you." Amelia Evans looked up at him with that complex expression that only mothers can perfectly master. It was a bizarre mixture of maternal pride, deep concern, and something that looked an awful lot like quiet reproach. "You arrived quite late," she stated simply. "I arrived exactly on time," Damien immediately replied, and there was something incredibly dark in the way he pronounced those specific words that forced Amelia to look away for just a brief second. Up on the stage, Lauren quickly recovered her professional composure. Her bright smile aggressively returned with the sheer efficiency of someone highly trained to carefully manage any awkward social situation. "Ladies and gentlemen," her voice regained its typical energetic bounce. "What an absolute honor to welcome one of the most prominent business leaders in our beloved city. Please give a massive round of applause for our highly distinguished guest." The entire ballroom immediately erupted into thunderous applause. Guests who, moments before, had barely noticed his quiet entrance were now standing up eagerly, reaching out their hands, desperately seeking his fleeting attention, like thirsty sunflowers blindly turning toward the bright sun. Damien greeted them with cold politeness, but absolutely zero enthusiasm, shaking their eager hands with the mechanical efficiency of someone who has done this exact routine thousands of times and has never actually enjoyed it once. From the swinging kitchen doors, Rachel watched the entire bizarre scene unfold. Chloe was standing right by her side, completely, utterly confused. "Who exactly is that man?" she asked, in a very low whisper. "Everyone out there is acting like the actual president just walked into the room." Rachel did not answer her question. She simply lowered her gaze, gripped the silver tray tighter, and retreated back into the hot kitchen without saying a single word. Chloe followed her back inside, growing increasingly intrigued by this incredibly mysterious woman who scrubbed dirty dishes, but stared down the wealthiest guests as if she knew dark secrets that absolutely no one else could possibly imagine. Inside the bustling kitchen, Fiona was aggressively talking on her cell phone. In a dark corner, her harsh voice reduced to a very tense, panicked whisper. Yes, he just arrived right now. No, absolutely no one informed me that he was coming tonight. He was definitely not on the confirmed VIP guest list. There was a long, heavy pause. What do you mean he just bought the entire hotel? When did this happen? Why was I kept completely in the dark? Fiona slowly hung up the phone and stood completely motionless, desperately trying to process the shocking information that had clearly shaken her to her very core. Her sharp face cycled rapidly through several distinct phases: sheer disbelief, cold calculation, and finally, absolute terror. She slowly looked over to where Rachel was quietly scrubbing dirty plates in the sink, and something finally seemed to click inside her panicked mind. It was a crucial piece of a massive puzzle that she still could not see entirely. Solace, she called out, her voice slightly less authoritarian than it had been before. Leave the dishes right now, go down to the basement storage room, and bring up more fresh linen napkins for the auxiliary tables. Rachel nodded silently without asking any questions. She dried her wet hands on her stained apron and began the long walk down to the basement located on the lowest level of the Grand Hotel, at the very end of a long, poorly lit corridor that the terrified employees commonly referred to as the tunnel. Walking down there always felt exactly like crossing the heavy border between two entirely different worlds. As she descended the stairs, her mind drifted to her grandmother, Clara, who had taught her to keep knocking on closed doors until they opened. In the storage room, reaching for the boxes, she suddenly heard heavy footsteps approaching. Rachel Damien's voice filled the small space. "You should not be down here," she whispered. "The most important person in my life is down here carrying napkins," he replied, closing the door behind him. Damien returned to the elegant ballroom and quietly took his proper seat at the main VIP table. He ate his extravagant dinner in absolute silence. Every single bite he took was purely mechanical, completely devoid of any actual pleasure, because his sharp mind was entirely somewhere else. He was still mentally down in the damp basement, thinking about the bloodshot eyes of his beloved wife, and that single tear he had gently wiped from her tired face just minutes ago. He forced a polite smile whenever someone directly addressed him, and nodded courteously when guests approached to shake his hand. But internally, he was meticulously constructing a mental map of every single person in that room who had played a part in Rachel's cruel humiliation. Sitting right next to him, Amelia ate her meal with the highly measured elegance of someone who had spent her entire privileged life desperately learning how never to reveal a single true emotion in public. But Damien knew his mother far too well. He noticed the severe tension in the exact way she rigidly held her expensive silver fork, and the almost imperceptible stiffness gripping her shoulders. His mother absolutely knew that something massive was about to change tonight, even if she did not yet know exactly what the fallout would be. Excellent event organization this year, a wealthy woman sitting across from Amelia casually commented while swirling her wine. Lauren truly outdid herself this time. Lauren always delivers exactly what is promised, Amelia replied quietly, without ever lifting her eyes from her expensive porcelain plate. She is a remarkably capable young woman. Damien deliberately placed his heavy silver cutlery down on the pristine table with a soft but highly calculated sound. Capable of what exactly, he casually asked, with a tone that absolutely fooled no one sitting at the table. Amelia quickly glanced at him out of the corner of her eye. Of organizing magnificent charitable events, of course. What else could she possibly be capable of? "I was merely asking a simple question," Damien smoothly replied, as he picked up his crystal water glass. "Sometimes people are truly capable of terrible things that we cannot even begin to imagine." Before anyone could respond to the heavy tension, A deep, incredibly warm voice interrupted them from the far side of the crowded table. "Damian Evans, nobody bothered to tell me that you would actually be attending tonight." Arthur Parker approached with that enveloping, kind energy that only people who have successfully navigated decades in the ruthless business world without losing their core humanity truly possess. He was an older gentleman, the kind who naturally inspires deep respect not because of his massive bank accounts, but precisely because of how he chooses to use them. He had been his father's closest business partner for many long decades. Arthur Damian quickly stood up to give him a genuine warm embrace. "I had absolutely no idea you were back in the city. I arrived just a short while ago." Arthur smiled warmly. "Some urgent matters regarding the charitable foundation that bears your father's grand name brought me back into town." He took a seat that a waiter hastily provided. "But please, tell me, how is everything going with you? And how is Rachel? I have not seen her in quite some time." "That extraordinary woman should definitely be sitting right here with you tonight." The sudden mention of Rachel's name provoked an immediate, barely visible but absolutely devastating chain reaction at the table. Lauren, who happened to be walking past the table checking on the dessert service, turned her head so violently that she nearly tripped over her own expensive heels. "Rachel is actually here tonight," Damian finally replied with a frighteningly calm voice. "She is significantly closer than everyone at this table currently believes." Arthur frowned, deeply confused by the highly enigmatic response. But before he could ask for any further clarification, Lauren rushed over to the table with her bright, professionally calibrated smile perfectly glued in place. "Arthur, what an absolute honor to have you with us tonight. May I quickly offer you something highly special from the chef's secret dessert menu?" "I am perfectly fine. Thank you, my dear Arthur." Looked at her with genuine kindness, but absolutely no particular interest. "I was just having a lovely conversation with Damian about his wonderful wife. Do you happen to know her?" Lauren fiercely maintained her bright smile, but something genuinely terrified trembled deep within her eyes. "Rachel." "Yes, of course, I have known her for quite some time." "Actually, for a very long time," Damian repeated slowly, leaning heavily forward over the table. "I had absolutely no idea that the two of you knew each other before all of this. Please tell us, Lauren, exactly where do you know her from?" The silence that instantly followed was purely electric. "We happened to cross paths many years ago." Lauren carefully chose every single word with surgical precision. Before her highly advantageous marriage, we actually used to frequent the exact same social circles." "The exact same social circles?" Arthur smiled with genuine innocent curiosity. "I honestly did not know that Rachel ever frequented the tight circles of luxury event planners." "Not exactly the same ones," Lauren corrected herself, far too quickly, her panic showing. "It was merely a highly circumstantial acquaintance. Now, if you will all please excuse me, I desperately need to go verify the final dessert plating." She practically ran away. Down in the kitchen, Chloe was sharing her heartbreaking story about her sick mother with Rachel, unaware of the impending storm. The extravagant dinner eventually reached its conclusion, and the wealthy guests began to freely circulate among the elegantly decorated tables. Damian politely excused himself from the main table and quickly sought out Arthur in a very quiet, secluded corner near the large glass windows overlooking the beautiful interior gardens. "Arthur, what I am about to tell you is incredibly delicate." Damian spoke in a very low, serious whisper. "And I desperately need your wise counsel." "Speak freely," my boy Arthur replied kindly. "Your late father always trusted me with absolutely everything. I sincerely hope that you can do the exact same tonight." Damian proceeded to explain the entire horrifying situation. Arthur listened in absolute silence, his kind face visibly transforming With every single disturbing revelation about Fiona's rampant corruption, Lauren's calculated cruelty, and Amelia's shocking complicity. Your father physically built this grand hotel with his own two bare hands. Arthur finally spoke, his voice heavy with deep sorrow. He strongly believed that a hotel should always be a safe place, where absolutely every single person is treated with basic human dignity, from the wealthy guest paying for the most expensive luxury suite to the hard-working person scrubbing that exact same suite the very next morning. What your mother did tonight would have completely destroyed his heart. There is something else you need to know, Arthur continued, lowering his voice even further. Lauren does not hate Rachel by mere coincidence. Many years ago, before you and Rachel were ever married, Lauren used to work right here at the front reception desk. She desperately tried to pursue you romantically on several different occasions. Your total indifference to her was a massive wound to her oversized ego. When you eventually married Rachel, a woman who came from the exact same humble background as Lauren, but actually achieved everything she desperately wanted, that bitter rejection mutated into a very dark, toxic hatred. Meanwhile, back in the hot, chaotic kitchen, Fiona burst through the swinging doors for the third time that evening. She marched directly toward Rachel, pointing a violently trembling finger right at her face. I just made a few very interesting phone calls to the Central Temporary Agency. Fiona hissed, her face pale with pure panic. Your employment forms are completely blank. No previous job references, no verifiable home address. Absolutely no hospitality history. Who exactly sent you here to spy on me? Rachel stared right back at her with terrifying calm. Are you genuinely worried about who sent me? Or are you terrified of what I have witnessed? Back in the ballroom, the highly anticipated charity auction officially began. Lauren enthusiastically presented the grand final item of the evening. It was a beautiful painting depicting a tired woman washing heavy clothes in a cold river. This stunning piece is appropriately titled Hands That Hold the World, Lauren explained with a highly theatrical voice. It perfectly represents the pure beauty of humble manual labor and the undeniable dignity found in everyday struggles. Damien tightened his jaw so hard it physically hurt. The blatant hypocrisy was so incredibly brutal, it felt entirely intentional. Lauren was literally auctioning a painting, praising humble work, while simultaneously punishing Rachel with it. Bidding rapidly began, with massive numbers flying carelessly across the room. Suddenly, Damien stood straight up. I bid double the current highest offer, his booming voice echoed. He slowly walked right up to the stage, took the painting, and faced the stunned crowd. I want to dedicate this specific purchase to someone truly special tonight. Someone who intimately knows exactly what it means to work hard with her bare hands. Someone who is currently inside this very building, significantly closer than any of you could possibly imagine. He glared directly at Lauren, whose face had instantly drained of all color. In the kitchen, Fiona was desperately trying to regain her shattered authority over Rachel. I am the general manager of this hotel. Fiona screamed, completely losing control. I will absolutely destroy your entire pathetic life. Rachel casually pulled her personal cell phone out of her stained apron pocket. Actually, Fiona, every single illegal threat you have made tonight and every single corrupt deal you orchestrated with the wine vendors has been perfectly recorded. Not by me, but by the very security camera system that you personally demanded we install to spy on the kitchen staff. You clearly forgot it also records clear audio. Fiona's mouth dropped wide open in absolute unadulterated terror. But before she could even attempt to form a coherent excuse, her cell phone vibrated violently. It was a frantic text message from her friend at the corporate registry office. It simply read, Rachel Solis is Rachel Solis Evans. She is the billionaire co-owner of the Sovereign Hotel. Fiona slowly looked up from the glowing screen, her eyes wide with the devastating realization of someone who finally comprehends the massive, life-destroying magnitude of their terrible mistake. She backed away from Rachel as if the woman scrubbing dishes had suddenly turned into a literal ghost. The heavy, swinging doors of the kitchen slowly opened. Damien walked in closely, followed by Arthur. Right behind them, Lauren practically stumbled into the room, her face completely pale, fully aware that she had been dragged right to the edge of a massive cliff. Damien looked directly at the terrified manager. "Fiona, I firmly believe you have already met my wonderful wife." Fiona opened her mouth, but absolutely no sound came out. All her previous arrogance, all her cruel intimidation tactics had completely evaporated into thin air. "I had absolutely no idea," Fiona finally managed to helplessly stutter. "You had no idea that treating innocent human beings like absolute garbage eventually has massive consequences." Rachel took a firm step forward. "Your job was never to steal illegal vendor commissions or mentally torture young girls like Chloe until they cried." Damien did not waste another second. "Fiona, you are completely terminated, effective immediately. Our corporate legal team will thoroughly review every single security tape, and you will face severe legal charges for your extensive financial theft." Fiona nodded slowly in total defeat, realizing her corrupt empire was permanently destroyed, and she quietly slinked out the back door. Next, Damien turned his furious gaze toward Lauren. "You knew exactly who Rachel was from the very first second. You intentionally created a public spectacle just to feed your own bitter jealousy." Lauren completely broke down, crying out that Rachel had stolen the perfect wealthy life she always believed she rightfully deserved. Rachel walked calmly over to Lauren. "I never stole anything from you, Lauren. I built my life with these exact same hands that washed dirty plates tonight. I am completely releasing you from the heavy burden of your toxic hatred." Lauren simply nodded, thoroughly exhausted by her own bitterness, and quietly walked out. Suddenly, Amelia stepped into the kitchen. The powerful, untouchable matriarch was openly weeping. She walked past the others and stood directly in front of Rachel. "I heard absolutely everything," Amelia whispered with a broken voice. "I was completely terrified of you because you represented the honest, humble truth that my late husband loved, a truth I cowardly abandoned to fit in with high society. I am so deeply sorry." Rachel carefully removed her wet-stained apron, folded it neatly, and gently took Amelia's trembling hands. "I forgive you," Rachel said softly. "You just need to finally forgive yourself." Damien gently placed his hand on Rachel's shoulder. "It is finally time that our guests meet the true, rightful host of this magnificent evening." He proudly extended his hand to her. Rachel grabbed it firmly. Before leaving the kitchen, she looked at Chloe, who was standing frozen against the tiled wall. "Come with us, Chloe. This moment is for absolutely everyone who has ever felt totally invisible in this building." Chloe wiped her tears and bravely followed the billionaire couple. When the grand ballroom doors swung wide open, 200 pairs of eyes instantly locked onto the shocking sight. Rachel Evans confidently walked into the luxurious ballroom wearing her simple water-stained service uniform, her bare hands still visibly red from the harsh soap and scalding hot water. Damien proudly led her right up to the main stage and took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to my brilliant wife, Rachel Evans, the co-owner of this grand hotel. Tonight, she chose to scrub dirty dishes in her own kitchen just to directly expose the horrible cruelty happening behind closed doors." The entire wealthy crowd gasped in absolute stunned horror. Rachel gracefully took the microphone. She spoke passionately about the countless invisible people who work tirelessly to hold up the luxury of the wealthy world. Because of the incredible kindness shown to me tonight by a young kitchen worker named Chloe, we are officially launching the Supporting Hands educational program. Chloe, your mother's massive hospital debts are completely paid off, and your new management career begins tomorrow morning. The entire ballroom, led enthusiastically by Arthur Parker, erupted into a massive, deafening standing ovation. Waiters and cooks openly wept with joy, realizing their lives were forever changed. Months later, the Grand Sovereign Hotel was completely transformed. The atmosphere was incredibly warm, built on genuine respect, rather than toxic fear. Chloe became a top manager, Amelia volunteered daily, and the staff finally felt valued. True dignity is never defined by the expensive clothes we wear or the massive bank accounts we hold, but by how we choose to treat those who serve us. Life constantly presents us with choices between cruelty and deep empathy. Forgiveness holds far more power than bitter revenge, and hard work is the most beautiful armor a person can wear. In the end, we must always remember that the quiet, humble hands that clean, cook, and serve are the very same hands that keep this entire world from completely falling apart.